Welcome to the Bodacious Women in Cannabis podcast, the show where the bold and brilliant women cannabis business leaders share their journey and their expertise. Here's your host, Susan Burns.
Hello, this is your podcast host, Susan Burns. I'm also a lawyer in the cannabis industry. And what delights me more than showcasing bodacious women in cannabis? Nothing. Today, we're talking with Pam Hartwell, and Pam is the owner, operator, and founder, sort of Mom's Farm. And Pam made a huge transition into farming at the age of, can I say it, Pam?
Yeah,
At
sure.
the age of 50. So we are going to have an amazing conversation. You're going to be so delighted you joined us. Welcome to you, Pam.
Thank you so much for having me.
So it's just a pleasure. What in the world made you decide to jump into farming at the age of 50? That's a big, bold, audacious move, if I might say.
Thank you. I honestly, so I am farming on the land I grew up on in southeastern Minnesota, a beautiful section of the Driftless in the Coulee region, looking out over the Mississippi River, and I don't know. It's such a twisted path of how I got here. I couldn't get far enough away from here when I got out of high school.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I spent almost 25 years all out in California, being an activist and a mayor of a town and a nonprofit leader and organizer. And
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was a really, really unique town that I was one of the only Green Party mayors in the country. So a town that would have me as their mayor is a unique town. It's Fairfax, California, greatest little town ever. But I don't know, but this is my home farm. I have a daughter who's 26, and every summer of her life growing up in California, we came to my mom's farm as often as we could for as long as we could. And every year I just started loving it a little bit more. One of the nonprofits I ran was an organization called Sustainable Fairfax. And then I ran a nonprofit organization on Terra Firma Farms. And I was just connecting more and more into really the messages and the learning of my childhood. And in the meantime, my mom is here on the farm getting older and older by herself. I got a sister in Florida and a brother in Colorado, and I was out in California. And I just got to a point where I said, I feel like I need to be there. I feel like we need to save this land in the family. My grandparents had purchased it in the 50s, 1950s. And I just felt a call to it. And so I left my husband and my nonprofit world and my mayorship and moved 2,000 miles away with my teenage daughter to have her spend a junior year away, a cultural exchange program in rural Minnesota, and try to be a farmer, try to find a way to save the farm, help my mother in her final years live peacefully and beautifully, which we did.
Nice.
And hold on to it and see, can I make a living on this farm? And I kind of went through goats and chickens and pigs and just kept trying to find the sort of niche that worked while I was still juggling nonprofit jobs in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And my mother passed, and I was finally able to buy out my brother and sister of the farm. It's 100 acre woods, as I like to call it.
Oh, that's a huge farm.
And then, 2 years ago, I was really able to sell a tiny little slice of the land and then invest that into the farm. And as cannabis in Minnesota started the legalization process, I just got excited. I had grown for many years out in California on a medical card. I'd grown cannabis for treating my own depression and anxiety and all the things that I needed to keep that lifestyle up of doing being a mom and doing a million things.
And living in California.
And I moved to Minnesota and found the just incredible lack of the kind of cannabis world that I had left in California was sad, but I wanted to be a part of making it not sad and be a part of really destigmatizing cannabis. And so last year I started growing CBD and
I
really
mean hemp.
enjoyed it. And
You're growing hemp.
I'm growing, in the Minnesota hemp program. I'm growing just beautiful CBD flower, and I had kind of a test batch last year, so I'm really sort of new to making this a commodity crop and product. But this year I've got almost 3 times as many plants in the ground. I grew them all from seed in a tent, and they're just absolutely gorgeous, beautiful plants. I've been a garden designer and a master gardener out in California, and so for me, it's really just this love of the plant and a love of the land, and a desperate attempt to make a living at it.
Oh my God, what haven't you done? Master
Very little.
gardener, blah, 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 blah. Okay,
Yeah,
so before we started the interview officially, the podcast interview, your conversation, um, you said you felt somewhat intimidated, and I, for the life of me, listening to you, cannot imagine why, with your background and all the things you've done and accomplished, and now you're
yeah,
farming, which is probably second to motherhood, the most difficult profession in the world.
yeah. And starting that in your 50s is madness. I don't know what I was thinking, other than I'm really glad I have a lot of good younger friends.
Yeah. Well, maybe the cannabis influence. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, and I honestly, like, I feel like a baby in this industry just because I've run nonprofits and I've run town. I've never run I've never, I mean, I had a garden design business, but it was a very much a side mom business. It wasn't like, this is your full-time job to go make money and make a living and live on this.
Hmm.
And so I'm intimidated by that, by a lot of the women out there who have figured out that way to find their true passion, and make a living at
Everybody
it.
starts at the beginning.
Yeah,
We're
that's the
all
truth.
we're all reborn into different things as life progresses. If we're lucky, I
Yeah,
think. I mean, some people stay in the
definitely.
same path,
Oh,
but
yeah,
I haven't been one of those people.
me either.
My journey's
Obviously.
been
Yeah,
zigzag
yeah.
too, so sounds like you
Yeah,
too.
life's an adventure.
It is. So tell me about, I guess, in starting your hemp farm, some of the challenges would have been, it sounded like what you were saying, financial in the
Yeah,
beginning,
yeah. So
or maybe
I was really
still.
fortunate. Yeah, really fortunate to be able to sell a little slice of our property. It was 120 acres, and I sold sort of two little, kind of a 10 and a 15-acre piece off. And fortunately, property is valuable here, and so that was enough money to kind of allow me to quit my day job. I was working for Habitat for Humanity. I was just ready. I was in the nonprofit world for almost 30 years, and I was tired of it. Like, it's draining, and it's a very, I don't know, it was just very sedentary. And especially with COVID, it was just sitting at my house
Zooming,
staring at a computer. And
zooming
I was
all
like,
day long.
my body plus menopause was like, I need to move more. I need to be doing something more physical. So I think my challenges are getting my body in shape to do the physical work, um, getting the land in shape. My mother was in her 80s when she passed, and for the last 15 or 20 years did not do much on the farm. It was not a working farm by any stretch of the imagination through my entire lifetime. It was more of a hobby farm in my childhood. My mom was like one of those 1970s back to the land movement folks,
Good
and
for
that was
her.
my childhood.
Good for her.
Um, but it was net this farm has not made anyone a living for a really long time, so we had to really clear space. It's, as I said, I told you, it was like we have 100-acre woods, and so you can't grow cannabis in the woods. And
Wow.
so we had to clear. Unfortunately, our electrical company has a line that comes through here, and so they clear that line, and I said, hey, can I grow under that line? And they said absolutely. So I'm growing on less than an acre, underneath the power line. And fortunately, my mother was a stickler about organics and what have you. And so she never let the electric company spray that line. They always had to manually clear it.
Good
So
for
I'm
her.
able, yeah, she laid the foundation for something she didn't know was ever going to happen.
Yeah, but the other
Yeah,
thing about so you have to prepare the land, but you don't have to regenerate the soil from years of abuse from
definitely.
genetically modified
Definitely.
crops and
Yes, that
pesticides
is
being
so
sprayed
true.
and all the
That is so
inputs.
true.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
benefit.
Yeah, but we have been doing really regenerative practices. I worked at a regenerative farm out in California for a while, and so I really understand the world of permaculture and regenerative farming. And so we're cover cropping, and we're using our chicken and goat manure as our fertilizers. And we're and I and li- have literally just invited people love farms, and so I've invited friends over to help out, and they've come. And it's just been it's been a real gift to have people sort of help me grow something that is personal. I've spent my life in the nonprofit world asking people to help others, and so it feels different but same to sort of ask people to help me, and people have been excited to do so, and I feed them really well. That's my
And I'm
that's
one
my
of your
payment.
friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yay.
Come on down.
So, well, I actually I miss the farm because my mom was raised on a farm, and so in the summers we'd always go to grandma and grandpa's, and I was the oldest, so I was able to spend 2 weeks at a time with one of my cousins out there,
I
and
love
I
that.
miss the farm. I do.
Yeah. Yeah, people love it, and it's a very sweet little, we're nestled in a perfect little Mississippi River Valley coulee. It's very beautiful. When my mother passed, we a friend and I had visited a labyrinth at a center nearby, and she's like, "We should put a labyrinth in your woods." And I said, "Yes, yes, we should let's do that." And so we built a little stone mossy labyrinth that you can walk in our woods. So it's also just it's a beautiful place of respite and healing, and it's just, we're right off I-90, but you feel like you're a million miles away.
Very cool. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and so last year was my first on challenges. I have a whole list. Last year was my first
Well, I
year
want to know
growing.
the positive outcome of your
Yeah, I'll get there. And half of my field tested hot, so I had to
Oh
destroy
no.
half of my first crop, and it was 0.4%,
Oh,
which was the 0.3 is the legal limit. So apparently, all my growing out in California trained me to grow for
higher
higher
potency.
THC rather than lower THC. So sadly, I did a little too well last year, but I feel really good. I had clones last year, and I did everything from seed this year, and I feel really good about my cultivars, and I feel really good about the plants going in. And so hopefully I'll test within range better this year, and next year we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So are you creating your own CBD from the plants that you grow?
That's correct. I am creating a product is a little 5-pack of CBD pre-rolls that are mixed with herbs. We all know that smoking isn't necessarily good for you, but we also know that in the world of cannabinoids, the best way to get the medicine is to light it on fire and inhale it. So, and it's also the best way to know that your product is really pure because you can see it. I get a little nervous about extraction of all kinds, but I also, when I was a smoker back in the olden days, smoking cigarettes, the way I quit was smoking herbal pre rolls. And so I've kind of kept that practice in my life. And there's so many beautiful herbs and flowers out there that you can smoke that go beautifully with CBD, and have sort of a lot of even I think there's like what's called the entourage effect with CBD or THC. And I find that these herbs sort of amp up that entourage effect without being like artificial terpenes or artificial this or artificial that. So I'm keeping it as natural as possible and harvesting as much on this land as I can, and starting to grow even all those herbs more on this land as well. So 5 little pre-rolls in a little cute pack that's smaller than a box of cards, and even has matches and a strike plate on the box so that you have a little all-in-one package of pre-rolls
Look
to
at
take with
you.
you anywhere you need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's
Just getting the
unique. I haven't
packaging.
heard of I haven't heard of anybody in Minnesota doing that. That's
Yeah, I've
there may
seen
be
them
people,
around a little bit here and there.
but yeah,
I've done a lot of market research out in California, and there's a lot of pre-roll packs out in California.
but aren't
So
they marijuana derived?
yes, they are.
Yeah, I haven't seen any
Yeah,
hemp.
and the nice thing about the CBD and the herbs is that I can sell them everywhere. So even if I get a license to do cannabis, there's a good chance I'll keep doing the CBD herbal pre-rolls because not everybody wants to get high, and it's a really beautiful product.
It is. I think it's so necessary I, for that very reason that a
Yeah,
lot of people are benefiting from it since it became legal in with the
yeah,
2018
definitely.
Farm Bill. And so
Yeah,
people are really, they find it very useful for a lot of, I mean, the anecdotal information I hear is fascinating and amazing.
yeah,
I always
yeah.
learn something new. So I
Yeah.
hope you do.
Yeah, and it's something that I've, even as I've started growing the CBD myself, have been experimenting with it and really love it. Like I really like I have had been sort of, on medical marijuana, so that was always sort of my first choice, but the more I imbibe CBD, the more I like it and find that it gives me so many of the same impacts of THC without um without the any disorientation or any, I mean, I'm never I don't think that euphoria is a bad side effect. So,
What did you have more challenges you wanted to discuss?
no, I think those were. I mean,
Those
I
are your
think
big ones.
those were the big ones. Yeah, just kind of getting the
Yeah.
land in shape. I had the incredible joy. So I moved back here almost 10 years ago and spent the first five sort of just working and taking care of my mom. And in that process, I had left a husband back in California. It was time, but I also ran into an old a friend from high school, and he and I have now been together for the last 8 years, and he's been my farm partner. And so figuring out how to farm as as a couple has also got its challenges, but it's also been an extraordinary amount of joy too. So
So, what is the most surprising, joyful thing that you didn't
oh,
expect?
just being out on the land, just being outside. I have this bird app that will listen to the bird song and identify the birds that are around me. I have a plant app so I can identify every single plant that's growing in our field. We are cover cropping. So the field is full of green before we put the plants in. And so that you want to make sure that, that it's the field of green is things that are good and compatible with the CBD and not going to really compete with them. And so just being out there with the plants and the animals and working so hard that I'm dripping with sweat and just, I really, and getting to, invite people out to help. All of that has just been a joy. And just knowing that I'm taking this land that is my job to steward. I don't feel like the owner of this land. I feel like the steward of this land. That's how my grandmother was. That's how my mom was. And so, really finding new ways to steward this land and bring a plant back onto it. That's been really. It's actually kind of funny. My very first experience with marijuana was on this land as a child. Because our neighbors, who are our tenants, were growing some marijuana up on the hillside, and I found it when I was hiking around as maybe a 10-year-old little girl and had to tell my mother about it. And the sheriff came. I feel terrible. I got he did cut it down. The sheriff cut down the plants and gave them a slap on the wrist. It was the 70s. And my
Okay.
mom said, "Oh, they're such good tenants. Please be nice to them." And then we proceeded. The sheriff was trying to shove I think they were like maybe 7 or 8 plants, and the sheriff was trying to shove them into the back of his like squad car. And my mom said, "Oh, we've got a burn pile. You want to just come burn it?" And so we proceeded to get really high with the sheriff when I was about 10 on this giant pyre of burning marijuana. So I at least knew that it was going to grow here. So
so, so a peak experience getting high with the sheriff at the age of 10.
yeah, that was my first experience with marijuana right here on this land. So I figured it was probably a good place to, to to heal my karma.
Yeah, destiny.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. Did you think of that afterwards about the feeling and like how do
It
I do that again, was it something that just occurred in your
was
like
something that occurred, and I didn't really think about it. My memory of it was that my sister had hatched this gosling in class because we had geese and ducks and chickens. We were a big, 4-H farm, and and she had hatched a gosling in her elementary school class, and the gosling came home with us to be reintegrated with the flock, but goslings imprint on the person who is with them the most when they first
You
hatch. So
cut
this
out again.
gosling
I
had
don't know if you
imprinted
can
on
hear
my
me.
sister, and yeah, and so my
Class.
memory of it is that she's walking around in circles and zigzag patterns, and the gosling is following her everywhere, and we're all just laughing and laughing, and a break in the laughter comes, and my mom says, "Is anybody hungry?" And we all went inside and ate, including the sheriff. So that's my very positive introduction to cannabis as
A
as
full
a 10-year-old.
experience.
Yeah.
So you had the laughter and the munchies. All the
Yep.
best. All the
All
best
the best
parts.
parts. Yep.
Oh, that's great. And um, so you still have chickens and goats
Yes.
on your hemp farm
And ducks. Yes.
and
Yes.
ducks. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, but no geese.
No geese. That was when my mom's like, "Oh, their poop is everywhere. They're obnoxious. They will surround a car and honk at it. They're pretty. We called them our guard geese when I was a kid, and nobody really liked them. So it was like, we don't need geese."
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, I think I'm sure I know the answer to what makes you so bodacious, but will you tell us about your brand of bodaciousness and what?
Yeah. Oh, geez. I guess it's just, it's the love of the plant, really, when it comes down to it. Having been a master gardener and having been a garden designer and maintenance person for most of my daughter's early childhood, I fell in love with plants. And I had grown up with plants, and my grandmother was a garden club president. And, I just, and cannabis is such a unique plant. It is unlike any other plant. And so I think what I guess if I have something that makes me bodacious, it's my love for the plant and my love for the land, and my desire to grow it really well and bring it to people who need it, and maybe not the people who necessarily, like, my target market is you and I. It's like menopausal women. And we want something different. I think when I visit my daughter in California, we go to the dispensaries, and there's like these pre-rolls with 30% THC dipped in Roy Simpson oil with rolled in keef. And I'm like, I don't want that. And I think that there's a lot of older, people in their 50s and beyond who want to experience this again, maybe come back to it, and maybe they experienced it in the 60s or the 70s. And this is a somewhat different plant. The potencies that are out there are sort of madness. And so I'm also really interested in creating a product that isn't the strongest thing you can possibly get, but is really more looking at varietals and species cultivars that are specific for some of the needs of women our age. And I'm excited about that. I feel like that's a niche that hasn't really been filled even out in California. It's hard to. I always go in and I say I want something that's sun grown. I want something that's the woman farmer, and they'll usually have some options. And for Minnesota, I would love to be, at least for my region. I'd like to be that option. Somebody. And so hopefully, as dispensaries start popping open, I can go in and say, hey, if women my age come in, maybe suggest this product.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing that because I am one of those
Yeah.
that doesn't. I don't. I was just in Vegas for a conference. Probably the only reason I'd ever go there,
Yeah.
but but I went into a dispensary as I always do when I'm in a different city, and everything was 100 milligrams, the 100 milligram gummies. I mean, I can't. I'm a 2.5 milligram
Yeah.
person, so I can't even buy that because how do you slice up
Yeah. Yeah.
one gummy? I mean, it's just and I don't know who can consistently take that because for my tolerance, I would be pasted on the couch for 3 days.
Yeah.
So I think it's a full spectrum, pun intended, of
Yeah.
people that have, and what you're serving is a very definite niche and a need.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're so
And
welcome. It's my pleasure.
where can people find you? Where can we find you if we want to try those delectable pre-rolls?
I'm just getting my packaging together now. So I have not sold, I've actually sold one pack of pre-rolls to a friend of mine in a not the right packaging at all. Because she tried, I've been sending out samples and doing some little survey testing with my friends to see which herbs they like and which mixes go well together. Oh, smoking rose petals is like swoon. It's just divine. There's some really,
Serious? I've never heard of that before.
yeah, I did like a mugwort rose blend in one, and it was so delicious and so delectable. So I'm trying to sort of figure out how to use the same packaging with a sticker on the back that is for different batches. So I'm really still very much in product development. My daughter is in the process of building my website right now, but she's in Amsterdam, so she's not doing it right now.
Okay. Yeah, I bet I can imagine where
this,
she might be hanging out.
this like think July will be our official launch where I will have packaging and a website and a place to purchase these products. I've had a number of friends around the area who have already said set me up with a display box. So check moms-farm.com is my website, and they will be available for sale on the website. And then I'm going to just try to get them in every smoke shop I can possibly find. I've been having fun networking from afar with all the folks who were working really hard on legalization in Minnesota. And so I'm hoping that I can, I went to the Minnesota hemp program organizing meeting this year. I got to meet Winona LaDuke, she's just a Green Party
Fun.
hero of mine. So that was amazing. I fangirled her.
Nice.
And so I'm gonna, July, August, they're gonna be hitting the shelves and available on my website.
Okay, so it's moms-farm.com.
Correct.
Thank you so much for joining me today and for this absolutely wonderful conversation. Do you have any questions about the conversation we're going to have? Or?
No, I've listened to a number of your podcasts, and you've interviewed just some remarkable, incredibly impressive women. So I got a little intimidated listening.
Oh my gosh, no, it's not.
I'm very new to the farm, like running a farm as a business. I have a long history in nonprofits and local government and doing all sorts of extraordinary things in that area. But in my early 50s, decided I'm going to start a farm. Why not? Why not start a farm?
Why not? Especially mom's farm.
So yeah, I took over some family land, and yeah, here I am. So I'm a little intimidated, but I'm good to go.
Oh, well, it's a conversation, so there isn't any reason to be intimidated.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is fascinating. And way back, I interviewed one farmer, Angela Dawson.
Yeah, the 40 Acres Project, right?
But that's the only person that I've ever interviewed with.
Yeah, that's what I saw on your list. I was like, where are the farmers?
Well, it's hard to find women farmers, first of all, and women farmers in cannabis.
Yeah.
So that's a sub specialty.
Yeah.
So, by the way, I'm recording. I start recording right away.
I figured you were. I see the little red light on.
I do that just because the best conversations I have usually are before we start the official.
Yeah.
And I was always thinking, oh my God, I'm wasting this beautiful. And then I would try to replicate it during the interview, and it never would happen. So I'm just hitting record when I start. And
smart. And no, the only other question I had for you is I have been working with a lawyer here locally, and she was really interested in getting into more cannabis law, and actually started putting a group together of other lawyers who were interested. And it was maybe a couple of years ago now, and they kind of decided it's too chaotic, it's too messy, we don't want in. But she was really disappointed that it fell apart. And so I would love to connect the two of you.
Oh, sure. What's her name?
Because she's down here in La Crescent. She's she's down in the southern. I don't think she's quite a competition. I don't know how in this world of sort of competition and collaboration.
I don't worry about competition. There are plenty of clients. There's a lot of work to go around, and especially as I like to support women. So,
Yeah, me too. Me too. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. When we're done with this conversation, I will make sure that I find a way to connect the two of you.
okay. And so since you've listened to the podcast, which thank you so much for that. I'm excited to hear
Yeah.
that. Um,
Yeah.
it's a labor of love and a passion of mine.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah,
And I really appreciate
yeah.
that.
I really have fun talking to people, women. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so the general drill, and yeah, I'm going to
Yes.
ask you what makes you bodacious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your unique brand of
And I'll probably be interrupted by roosters crowing and cats
good.
and dogs. So I'll do
Listen,
done my best to soundproof my space, but it's impossible.
note to editor: leave Rooster Crow in.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
a farm
definitely.
podcast, right? Or
when I was when I was at I quit my day job last year to dedicate myself full time to the farm, and but before that, it was of course COVID, and I was in a nonprofit organization doing community organizing, and so Zoom calls were the norm,
Mhm.
and people would just get so excited to hear the chickens and the animals in the background. I even did a tour, Bring Goats to Your Meeting, as a fundraiser for Habitat for Humanity, where I was working, and did for a couple of people, made donations to Habitat so they could have my goats in their meeting, and that was pretty ridiculously
Oh, that
fun.
sounds great. Oh, good. So, well, let's roll.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. I'll just take a little break here so the editor knows I'm starting the official. So 5 seconds, and then I'll
Yep.
start in.
Sounds good.